everybody, and welcome to the Diaries. Version 2.0, Episode 3. Today we're going to do something I actually was planning to do before updating the video blog, and what we're going to do today is I'm going to go around the walls of Darkslade Manor, and there's a lot of things I haven't touched up in forever. Some dusting and rearranging some things and what have you. And for those of you who have just recently joined Darkslade Diaries, you may not know about a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to show it to you. The homage to the Haunted Mansion. It's part of my personal weirdness, but everybody has a hobby, and this one was mine. Now, let me give you a real quick history. I started doing this back in 2020. March of 2020, as a matter of fact, because the COVID issue had started up. Everybody was confined to homes, couldn't go in, couldn't go to work, but the government was giving you enough money to live on or whatever. And I, like thousands of people during that time, I got bored. Now, when you get bored and you're a person who just sits around and reads or whatever, anyway, it's not a big deal. But I'm kind of a creative person, and I have specific things that I truly, truly love. In my case, my biggest love now when I say that, I don't mean that on a, I mean it on a personal basis. I love this, and that is Disneyland. Disneyland and Disney World. I am a big Disney fan, specifically the Haunted Mansion. That doesn't say a heck of a lot about my, level of sanity, but by the same token, nobody's really that way when you're stuck at home for months on end with nothing to do. So I decided to do this homage to the Haunted Mansion. Now keep in mind that when I decided to do this, I didn't decide to do this in 2020. I decided to do this back in 1970, about 1974, 75. As I hit 18, one thing I wanted to do was to have my own place that I could do interior to look like Haunted Mansion, or whatever at the time. Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean. Back in the 70s, of course, there was no Indiana Jones, but still Adventureland was one of my favorite places to hang out, even though at Disneyland, Adventureland is the smallest land, and it had, at the time, it had the Tiki Room and the Jungle Cruise, and that was it. But I liked the ambiance. So I wanted to do that kind of thing. Well, I never had the opportunity. I got married, I had kids, I got divorced, I still have kids, the same kids. I was working, moving around from one place to another, finally wound up here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm from California, by the way, for those of you who don't know. And I've lived in Arizona for 27 years. And in 2020, sitting there, looking at my bare walls that had some Kingdom Hearts stuff hanging up, I think, and saying to myself, do it now while you can. Because at the time, if you were on unemployment, you were getting a nice little bonus to your unemployment. And this was for everybody, of course. Now, this is the weird thing. I had more money coming in then than I did while I was working. So, let's combine all these ingredients. Boredom, money, and a weird idea of something you want to do. And kabloomaza! Here you go. So what I'm going to do today, that was the history of why my home, Darkslade Manor, looks like it should be called Darkslade Manor. So I'm going to kind of take you around. Now, not everything is Haunted Mansion design. It is Haunted Mansion, influence, but not necessarily part of the ride itself, or the attraction itself, or even the movies for that matter. But they're pretty interesting, in my humble yet correct opinion. So that's going to be pretty much what this episode is about. And we'll take a look at what's here and what I have in mind and all that kind of fun stuff. So, without any further ado, because I had dude for quite a while on that one, let's get going. Let's start here in this group of pictures. Starting off with the wallpaper. The wallpaper is from the corridor doors. The corridor of doors, which is in the Haunted Mansion as you leave the conservatory, headed towards Madame Leota's chamber. The wallpaper is all this. I had this specially made, and you can't tell from there, but this isn't paper, it's actually linen. It's like what you'd put on your bedspread. And the person who made it in a size of 4 feet by 8 feet. So it was cut in half to fit. And you can't really tell, and I'm not going to point it out to you, so I'm just going to say there's a spot where the two pieces come together and they just barely out of alignment, but that's the way that goes. Okay, so as far as the pictures on the wall, this is Melanie Ravenswood. She's from the Haunted Mansion in Paris, which is Phantom Manor. She was the daughter of Henry Ravenswood, who is the actual Phantom. But that's a story for another day. Up here is George Gracie Jr. He is he is what is considered the ghost host now. He wasn't originally, but you'll find him in the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland and Disney World. Up here is the Hatbox Ghost. His picture does not hang up in the wall. Oh, wait! Yes, it does. I don't have that one here, but there is a picture of the Hatbox Ghost's head is hanging on the wall in the Haunted Mansion. That was always there. Most of the portraits in the hallway of the Haunted Mansion are actually the heads of pop-up ghosts out in the cemetery. And in this case, it was the head of the original Hatbox Ghost, which was only there for, I think it was there for 3 days max. I can tell you this with pride, I saw it when it was there. Of course, I was a wee lad, and just a tiny little Darkslade at the time. I would have been like 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old. And I remember that thing because it creeped me out. Not because the effect didn't really work all that well, it just was creepy. Okay, actually I believe my entire family saw that when it was in there, because I believe I saw it on a trip with my family. Anyway, so these two here are pop-up ghost heads, which hang in the corridor doors. My arm got caught on a hat. This one down here in the corner, you can't see too well, that is Hatchet Man, which was the second concept for the ghost host. He was supposed to be the one who is hanging from the rafters in the stretching room. The first, just to clue you in, the first original host was the Raven. But the Raven was so small, people didn't see him, and it wasn't going to work. So that's why you'll find the Raven throughout the ride. Those are places where you were going to hear narration. Also, I've heard one recording of the Raven's voice, and it was stupid, so it's a good thing they heard that. Now this here, you can't see too well, has absolutely nothing to do with the Haunted Mansion. This is a little girl who, when you walk past her, her face turns into, you know, one of those things. The wreath is the point here. In the front of the Haunted Mansion, you'll note that there's two long black draperies hanging from the balcony above the front door, and there's a large wreath. If you do not know, and I would assume most of you, that indicates a death in the family. So in this case, I put this around the little girl because A, it's creepy, B, it's the best representation I can get of that, and 3, it's A, B, and 3, yeah, that's A, B, 3, 4, E, F, G, I don't know. It's creepy. Oh, that was number 1. Well, it's also number 3. So, that's as far as this is concerned. So, here's the first part, and now you know about them. And they look really cool at night when this place is lit up properly. And yes, I am going to show you that as well. One thing that I didn't show you is on the Melanie picture here. If you show her a little love, now up here on the wall next to the portraits, you see this torch, which does light up. I wanted it to actually have flame out the top, you know, fake one, but the size is too small for anything. I'm still working on that. But this is a replica of the torches that are at the end of the ride when you get out of your cars and you're in the underground, going past Little Leota. You see these torches on the wall. This one I had made. It's a 3D print, and it's about half the size of the actual ones out there. So up here we have a few things that are not technically in the Haunted Mansion. These are not, but they look so gosh darn good that I got them. I think I got them at home. Not at home, at home. You can't say that. I got them at home, at home. And the Raven, of course, is in the Haunted Mansion. And then here we have Gus's spirit bottle and the Hatbox Ghost spirit bottle. Now these were sold for a short period of time during the, I believe it was the 50th anniversary of the Haunted Mansion. And at the time, at the park, I could not afford them. So I got them after the fact. But these are the ones that were sold there. And the batteries, it takes 9,244 batteries to run these things. And basically, the spirit will appear in the bottle, and you'll hear Madame Leota talk about it. I will show it one to you before the end of this episode. The two vestibules right here are just ones that I picked up that look very cool. And then behind them, it's hard to see, but the bookends are Uncle Claudius and Aunt what's her name? Yeah, the heads that follow you on the in the entry corridor. And then the books are all tales from the Haunted Mansion that were made over the course of the last couple of years. Okay, I'm These two busts are actually not Uncle Claudius, that's Uncle what's his name? Lucius. Uncle Lucius and Aunt Lucretia. They are the two busts at the end of the portrait hallway. I showed you the busts over on a little shelf and gave them the wrong name. I was thinking of two characters that are actually out in the cemetery. But in any case, Uncle Lucius and Aunt Lucretia are the busts that follow you around, and my version, they also follow you around. However, right now their backlighting is very, very dim because the battery's almost dead, which is pretty much the story of the entire front room here at Darkslade Manor. Just dead batteries everywhere. Anyway, so I made these out of, this is basically, can you see? Here we go. This is foam core, which I painted black. The inside is a mold of the two vestibules. I got the molds. Where did I get the molds? I got them from Etsy, I'm pretty sure. And I'm not sure exactly where they got them, but they are slightly smaller than the original molds. And then the curtains are just some red fabric I found, and then I covered it with that stuff. And then I put it on several bookshelf right angles that I got at You know, the special effect of the bust, the vestibules, the heads, whatever you want to call them, following you were created by accident by Yale Gracie. He had a bust of Abraham Lincoln from Great Moments of Mr. Lincoln sitting on a table, and it was facing the opposite direction. Now, it was the molds, not the bust itself. And with the light on behind it, he noticed that good old Abe was following him wherever he went, and that's where they got this idea, which is actually quite the phenomenon. Up here is probably my favorite recreation. This is the April-December painting. The character is April DeCibio, and she is more well known as April December. Now, if you don't know where this is in the Haunted Mansion, then you don't know where the Haunted Mansion is. But here's the original. And this is mine. As you can see, my wall sconces don't have quite as many candles as the one in the mansion. Now, this was created using, believe it or not, I made this on my computer with my printer. That's 4 sheets of paper that makes up April's portrait there. If you look at it specific ways, you can kind of see it, but when I usually have this on display, it's pretty invisible. Now, the April-December picture changes from April to December. Mine does not, because I don't have that ability, or if I do, I haven't used it yet. However, I personally find the April picture more disturbing than the December picture. And the reason being, the December picture is a dead giveaway. It's kind of something you would expect in a haunted house, a creaturized human. This is April as she originally appeared. We don't know her backstory. Well, I know one version of her backstory, but I don't feel like sharing that at the moment. Well, it's getting a little late. No, it's getting quite a bit late. And this episode is coming out longer than I expected, because there's a lot to see, a lot to know. So we're going to break it up into 2 parts, and they're finishing part 1 right now, and then part 2 will be next week. And in part 2, we'll go over the last of the stuff in here, and then we'll be doing other things later on. That sounded pretty vague, didn't it? I like vague. If I say exactly what's going to happen and we actually do it that way, there's no surprise. So anyway, we're going to end this episode right now, and we'll bring up the second part on our next episode, which will be the next part. Yeah, in the meantime, you guys have yourselves a great week.
I want to have a great week. Grumpy old man.
Yeah, a great... I saw a guy back there. He said,
"Oh, I have a great week. I'm a grumpy old man."
you have a great week too, you old son of a gun, you. And we'll see you on the next episode. End of life.